Do you remember reading The Best Christmas Pageant Ever by Barbara Robinson? Maybe you know these iconic opening sentences.
The Herdmans were absolutely the worst kids in the history of the world. They lied and stole and smoked cigars, even the girls, and talked dirty and hit little kids and cussed their teachers and took the name of the Lord in vain and set fire to Fred Shoemaker's old broken-down tool house.
The 1972 Christmas classic introduces us to a family many of us know, if a little outlandish. These are the Herdmans. I'm Lisa DeSaro, and this is Remember Reading.
What I remember her saying most of the time was, I never met a whole family of them, but I've known a Herdman here or there. In fact, she said a lot of letters that she got were from people saying, I know Herdmans. I've got Herdmans in my town.
That's Margie Pinto-Leite, Barbara Robinson's daughter, reflecting on her mother's characters.
I'll say there was a boy on my school bus who every time I got on there, he would say, call me Large Marge, the garbage barge. So he was kind of a Herdman to me. But really, I think that's another sort of unique thing about the story is that the Herdman family, they stick together.
These Herdmans, like the ones in the book, are often misunderstood characters who, despite their mischief, share a deep bond.
You know, they've been dealt a difficult hand in life. And, you know, I think they do all these sorts of misguided things, but they somehow know that they have one another. And, you know, there's love there in that. And I think that that translates to readers.
Okay, I am obsessed with them. I mean, I love how in the very beginning, it just like they're absolutely the worst kids in the history of the world. And it talks about all the things, right? They talk dirty, they hit little kids, they cuss out their teachers. And as a teacher, I'm always like, oh, I know that kid.
That's Joanna Ho, author of A City Full of Santas, Eyes That Kiss in the Corners, Playing at the Border, and more. She feels like she's met the Herdmans in her classroom.
And this part about setting fire to Fred Shoemaker's tool house, I just feel like they're hilarious. And likely I think as a teacher brain, I'm like, oh, they're deeply misunderstood. I wonder what's going on. But also, they're so funny.
There are 6 Herdman children: Ralph, Imogene, Claude, Leroy, Ollie, and Gladys. They wear clothes that don't fit. They're a little too skinny, and their mother isn't able to be around for them all that often. But it isn't a Herdman who tells the story. In fact, the narrator, unnamed in the original book but in the film identified as Beth, is nothing like a Herdman. Perhaps that's why we see the humor in an otherwise more sensitive situation. When they burn down Fred Shoemaker's tool shed, playing with Leroy Herdman's Young Einstein chemistry set, the firemen come with donuts. Beth says this.
Of course, it was a great lesson to the Herdmans. They learned that wherever there's a fire, there will be free donuts sooner or later.
And now, the Herdmans are bringing their chaos to the big screen, courtesy of director Dallas Jenkins. And it's well overdue for an update.
I remembered seeing the TV movie that was done in the early 80s, but I didn't remember much about it. I just had little flashes.
Margie remembers what it was like when the TV film came out.
I remember sitting around the TV set when it aired, all my sister and I, my dad and my mom, and, at the commercials, the phone would ring and people would say, your book is on TV? Yes, maybe we weren't quite sure or didn't know. So that was fun.
It was 20 years ago when Dallas was reminded of the book. His wife spotted a copy while she was out doing some shopping.
It was on a Pottery Barn shelf. It was like one of those like $3 to $5 impulse type things that they put on the shelf. And so she grabbed it, brought it home, said, remember this book? And I said, yeah, I remember reading it as a kid.
So they decided to read the book as a family.
And so I pull it out. We get the kids. At the time, my kids were like 5 years old, 3 years old. And I'm reading the first couple chapters and I'm like, man, I don't remember this being so funny and so good. It is so witty. Like it's kind of promoted as a kid's book. But I'm telling you, you can read this as an adult, and it's like The Wonder Years. It's like, Home Alone, A Christmas Story, where it is through the eyes of a kid, but it's written so witty. I'm appreciating that. I get to the last chapter where the Christmas pageant is performed, and the story of these 6 herdman kids who are the worst kids in the world, and they hijack this Christmas pageant.
The story goes like this. Every year, Beth, her brother Charlie, and everyone at school participate in the yearly Christmas pageant. Everyone but the herdmans. When the mother of a girl named Alice is unable to take charge of the pageant, Beth's mom has to do it. It's not so bad, it seems, until the herdmans decide they want to be center stage. The oldest herdman, Imogene, is to be Mary. She and her herdman counterparts are the school bullies. And they don't even know the story of Christmas. I asked Margie how her mom got the idea to write the book. She saw a bit of a gap in the available Christmas stories at the time.
So I think it was around Labor Day that she set out to write this Christmas story. She put Christmas music on, and she pulled out some of her favorite Christmas stories. And I remember her saying that one of the picture books the writing was all about the Nativity and essentially the story of Christmas. And it occurred to her that for her, that was second nature. She knew that story back and forth. And she started wondering what it might be like for someone or a family who maybe had never even heard that story before. Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus following a star to a barn, sleeping in the hay.
We watch the herdmans interpret the nativity story with the sharpened curiosity of children. In one scene, during a rehearsal, the herdmans question whether King Herod, who usually doesn't make an appearance, should be part of the play.
The herdmans wanted to know all about Herod, what he looked like and how rich he was, and whether he fought wars with people. He must have been the main king, Claude said, if he could make the other 3 do what he wanted them to. If I was a king, Leroy said, I wouldn't let some other king push me around. They were really interested in Herod, and I figured they liked him. He was so mean he could have been their ancestor, Herod Herdman, but I was wrong. They wanted somebody to be Herod so they could beat up on him. I couldn't understand the herdmans. You would have thought the Christmas story came right out of the FBI files. They got so involved in it. Wanted a bloody end to Herod, worried about Mary having her baby in a barn, and called the wise men a bunch of dirty spies.
So the herdmans, in spite of our narrator's assumptions, don't like Herod. They want retribution. The moment demonstrates the huge wit, not just of Barbara Robinson, but of the herdmans. And that's what kids respond so strongly to when they first meet this book, the funny of it all. That's what made it a classic to begin with, Margie tells me.
I know that seems maybe a small piece, but I actually think that has a lot to do with it. Kids have told her that over and over. And I think because it's a book about something that has traditionally been very holy and austere. And, I think humor sort of mixes that up a little bit.
The austerity Margie mentions is evident in other favorites of Margie's, like The Little Match Girl by Hans Christian Andersen, in which a poor girl uses a match to keep herself warm. Of course, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas by Clement Moore is among the oldest of Christmas books in this tradition. When author and illustrator Loren Long had the opportunity to make his own illustrations for a new edition, there was no shortage of available inspiration. From the original illustrations by Jesse Wilcox Smith, to Mike Berenstein's Berenstain Bears, to Charles Santor's watercolor vision of The Night Before Christmas, one of Loren's favorites.
It's just beautifully classic, big, beautiful, magical. But the one thing about his version that really got me thinking and almost gave me my own little permission to launch into doing my own version is his is so beautifully and so well done, and so many other versions are. But I just said, I can't go there.
In Charles Santor's illustrations, wide angles and a deep palette give way to winding mansion stairs, canopied beds, and an almost luminescent Santa Claus. Some of these features are those we see in Loren's edition, but not a decked-out mansion.
You know, if I'm going to do this, I want to bring something new to it, something contemporary. And the one thing that does strike me, as much as I love his illustrations, are it's very classically done. The house is beautifully decorated. The house is, you know, it's a particular kind of family that inhabits that Christmas morning and that Christmas experience. And that was something like, hey, you know, too many people have done this beautiful book for over 100 years now. I mean, this piece was written 200 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, we don't need another beautiful family and beautiful, you know, beautiful house with all the decorative stuff, you know, at Christmas.
In the original version, illustrated by Jesse Wilcox Smith, the images take up just the very middle of the page. The decorations are certainly all there, and even in small images, we get a sense of the evening's grander scale. Though notably, an especially fur-clad Santa and his reindeer are quite small, no larger than a fireplace. Most versions of the story keep a lot of those big classic features, grand halls strung with baubles. In Loren's version, his Santa is a new take on that former, maybe near-forgotten image of a Santa, perhaps just small enough to slide down a chimney.
One of my favorite ones in this particular book is when he's on the rooftop, like looking up at the chimney, and all the reindeer are looking up at him too as he's like problem solving how he's going to climb into this humongous chimney.
I asked Loren about his idea for the illustration.
It's fun for me that Joanna pointed that picture out. That's just me taking the cue of that original text. It's a jolly old elf, and he's diminutive. So I'm like, yeah, he's got his little reindeer. And they say 8 tiny reindeer in this text. So I'm like, those are tiny reindeer. They're not the big ones that everybody paints. So that's sort of my just little fun thing. And then, yeah, he would be staring up. Oh, how am I going to, I'm going to hop up on that fireplace, you know, that chimney.
But Loren changes more than what we might imagine of Santa. Loren's illustrations are far more representative of the general population than we might see in other earlier versions of the story. This struck Joanna, who often felt like an outsider in the holiday season as a young person.
It wasn't like a huge part of my upbringing or my childhood. I think it's something I was conscious I wished. Like, you live in a space where it feels so pervasive, and I didn't understand it.
And of course, she didn't see herself represented in books, Christmas or otherwise.
For me as an Asian person, I think I just never saw myself. I never saw myself as a character in any books, except for really racist ones like Tiki Tiki Tembo, where if you don't know, a kid falls down a well and no one can save him because he's Chinese and nobody can say his long, ridiculous-sounding name.
This has been the experience of many children. And maybe that's why so many authors are taking up the cause. 8 Nights of Lights, a celebration of Hanukkah, written by Leslie Kimmelman and illustrated by Hilly Kushner, follows a young girl and her family as they prepare for and learn about the traditions of the Jewish holiday. The People Remember is a lyrical book written by Ibi Zoboi and illustrated by Love is Wise that uses the principles of Kwanzaa to talk about African American history. These books, and books like them, have always been important for young readers. They just haven't always existed.
And it's one of those things where you don't know how much you've internalized about the messaging you're receiving from the world until I was really, truly an adult, where I was, you know, like I saw Crazy Rich Asians. And it's not even my favorite movie, but I was like this real aha moment. there's a lot of people who celebrate Christmas around the world, but the ones we capture are often white families and a big fat white Santa.
The illustrations of Loren's Night Before Christmas each take up a full 2-page spread, and we follow 4 families across the U.S., each of them unique. Loren sought to challenge the narrow representation of the story as told in images.
What kind of children, what kind of families do I want to portray? And then I thought, maybe I could do more than one family. So, because the text is classic, right? Especially grown-ups that are reading it, they know these words. And so I thought, I'll bring 4 families, 4 different kinds of families. So, and 4 different kinds of houses, and even 4 different kinds of regions.
In one spread, we follow a family in a brick urban house. In another, a farmhouse, where we see carrots left out for Santa. Elsewhere, a suburban trailer park with what appears to be a father asleep on the couch and 2 boys sleeping just in the other room in bunk beds. But it was the tropical home, somewhere maybe in Florida, somewhere that doesn't see much snow, that gave Loren the most trouble. In the tropical home, we first see Santa come in through the chimney.
It was like, okay, how do I illustrate this? The child in me wanted to see the soot, right? And I wanted to see Santa Claus inside that chimney. What would it look like when he first lands? You don't even see his face. So that's kind of where I landed on that one. And that's where I have, if you look closely, there's a cactus and, a plant on the right. And there's the cookies, but also the key lime pie. And then there's actually a little, I don't know if it would be a lizard or something in that cactus, on that pot. But the mother of the household, or one of the mothers, is in the hallway, and it's dark.
You can just make out the palm trees outside the window in the dark night.
And then we go from that page back to the urban house, where we have 2 different kinds of setups on the mantle, suggesting that this is a multi-faith family. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow.
This deliberate choice to showcase a variety of settings and living arrangements broadens the visual narrative of Christmas. And we need that. In fact, the need for broader representation in such books is what prompted Joanna to be a children's author. And that's the work that she's doing in her new book, A City Full of Santas, illustrated by Phuong Tai. In it, a little girl and her mother go looking for the real Santa in downtown San Francisco. What they find is not what they expected. I asked Joanna what prompted the idea for the book.
A City Full of Santas. The idea came because I took my kids many years ago. So my daughter was 3 at the time and my son was 5. And I took them up with another friend to San Francisco I think we went to go see a daytime show of a kid's version of the Nutcracker or something. And I didn't realize that it was SantaCon in San Francisco that day. And so the city was full of adults participating in adult activities very publicly all over the streets, literally crowded on rooftops, crowded on sidewalks. And my 3-year-old, she was wearing this blue, long, sparkly Elsa dress. And she got out of the car and she saw all the Santas and she just lost her ever-loving mind. She threw her hands in the air and she went sprinting down the street and screamed. She was screaming, "Santa! This is the best day ever!" And I was just standing there it was so funny. And in that moment, I was like, I think I should write a book about this.
There are Santas everywhere. Inside the front cover, we see a Santa on a skateboard. He's of Asian heritage, just like the main character and her family. As they move through the crowded streets of SantaCon, we see a diverse cast of Santas. There's a violin-playing Santa. There's Santas of all backgrounds and genders. There's even a rainbow-haired Santa. But none of them feel like the right one.
It was also one of my first years as a single mom, like doing Christmas with my kids. And so I was thinking a lot about like, who makes the Christmas magic happen? Who makes all these memories? And what's happening in the background so that kids can feel all this magic? And so I also think I wanted to capture that in the book without ruining Santa for people who believe.
In the book, Mom makes all of the memories, with a little help from a Santa she knows particularly well. But she's not the only Santa in the book, obviously. Where are there more Santas than at SantaCon?
It was really important to me that the Santas were a diverse group, that like, as she's searching for the real Santa, that the options and possibilities of what a Santa can look like sort of stretch and expand the idea of who Santa is and who Santa could be.
Like Joanna's Santas, or like Loren's depictions of families on Christmas Eve, the Herdmans are maybe not what we imagine of Mary or Joseph or the wise men. But the Herdmans in the end, Margie says, are looking for belonging. And who can't relate to that during the holidays?
So everyone thinks it's going to be a disaster because they didn't even heard the story before. But when they perform it and their poverty and their outsider status actually helps them understand the true story of the Nativity more than anyone else, I was just broken. I'm crying so hard, I can't see the words. It's ugly crying, and my kids are looking at me funny, and my wife, Amanda, says, "Oh, give it to me, let me read it." She starts crying, so we're just passing it back and forth while the other person tries to recover.
As the pageant kicks off, Beth is waiting for chaos to ensue. And so are we. And Barbara Robinson keeps that promise. But then, as the angels in the chorus are singing Silent Night, something happens.
And when we got to Son of God loves pure light, I happened to look at Imogene, and I almost dropped my hymn book on a baby angel. Everyone had been waiting all this time for the Herdmans to do something absolutely unexpected. And sure enough, that was what happened. Imogene Herdman was crying.
For 20 years, Dallas committed to finding a way to make this movie.
I was born to make it.
Then he did. Margie had been waiting for this moment for a long time.
You know, I will say, my mom sold the film rights to Best Christmas Pageant Ever many years ago. And for a long time, nothing happened. And I sort of wondered, I was a little frustrated, truth be told, because being the person who sort of manages my mom's professional stuff, I get asked frequently by, producers, film writers, if I would be interested in it being made into a film. And so I had reached out a couple times to the person who had the rights, and he kept telling me, I promise you, I am waiting for the right opportunity. And he really was very passionate about the book. He knew my mother. I hadn't known that. So he really was waiting. And it was probably a couple of years ago that he contacted me and said, that moment has come. I think we've found the perfect combination, and we're going to move forward with the filming. And so it's very exciting. It's very exciting to me.
Not everyone was super thrilled that the book would become a film, though.
For the people who this book is sacred, like me, I've talked to a lot of people who came in going, you are walking on a fine line, my friend, trying to take this book on.
Anytime we take on a classic, we challenge it a bit. We might even challenge, like Loren, some of the ways the text makes meaning using visual narratives. Joanna's family does just that when they create their own Christmas pageant together.
One of the traditions we do every year on Christmas morning is we reenact the Nativity. By we, I mean my children. And we will try to dress up with whatever I have in the house. And it's just devolved every year. One year, my son was Mary, and he was birthing 2 stuffed animals out of his stomach. And then there was a rocket ship that shot up behind him. And then my aliens came out of space. I was just recording it okay, that's how the nativity went this year.
Sounds a whole lot like a herdman pageant. And maybe that really is the best kind of celebration. The kind with a bit of chaos baked in.
Anyone who's trying so hard to create magic in this season is often actually just chaos and destruction. And part of that also, I hope, is we can embrace that and see the beauty in just having that time together, which I think is captured so beautifully in the story of the Herdmans, but also probably in all of our lives as well.
The enduring appeal of books like The Best Christmas Pageant Ever and A City Full of Santas lies in their ability to connect with us on a deeply personal level. They invite us to see Christmas through the eyes of children, with their unmatched curiosity, their unfiltered honesty, their spirit of wonder. But these stories also ask us, does the Christmas spirit transcend cultural boundaries? Each book has its own way of saying yes, and Barbara Robinson's is one that's hard to forget.
The last 6 words of the book are the last 6 words of the movie, which is, "Unto you a child is born." Now, again, whether you're a believer or a non-believer, you've heard that phrase. It's what the angels announced to the shepherds. It's in the Bible. It's a famous 6-word phrase. But what does that mean, right? So whether you believe it as Jesus as the Son of God, as the Savior of mankind, or you just like the story because it's a nice Christmas story, regardless, if you believe it or don't, but you want to live out what it means, right? It means that Jesus was born as a suffering servant. He was born as an outsider. He was born into poverty and grew up teaching others. And when he became an adult, taught others the importance of generosity, the importance of unconditional love, unconditional kindness, which is what he did for us. And so if we truly believe that, it should not result in division, tribalism, judgment, bigotry. It should result in love and redemption and grace, because as we've received grace, as unto us a child was born, unto others we must also show grace. And so I think that, I know that people walking out of this movie have gotten what I hoped, which was, all right, and now what? Are we going to show love to others, even especially the outsider, especially those in poverty? And I don't think that's a message anyone would argue with, and I think it's what I hope people come away with. And yes, I'm also a Christian. I'm someone who believes deeply in the birth of Christ as the heartbeat of Christmas. And whether you're a believer or not, the book is so touching.
The book isn't just for the religious, or even just for those who celebrate Christmas. This isn't a church book, Dallas says.
I read about it in public school. This isn't a church book. This isn't a book that comes at you with here's a Jesus story, and if you don't believe, you're probably not going to like it. It doesn't feel like that at all. And yet, as a Christian who believes in what the true story of Christmas is and how it can impact your heart, and that whether you're a believer or not, 2,000 years later, it still impacts people around the world, this notion of sacrificial giving, and that some of us, believers and non, have lost that.
Anyone at all can fall in love with the Herdmans. When Gladys Herdman first practices the famous line, "Unto you a child is born," she and Imogene try to understand it, interrogating who exactly the baby Jesus is for.
Gladys is the angel who comes to the shepherds with the news. "Yeah," Gladys said. "Unto you a child is born," she yelled at the shepherds. "Unto me," Imogene yelled back at her. "Not them, me. I'm the one that had the baby." No. Mother sat down on a front pew. That just means that Jesus belongs to everybody. Unto all of us a child is born.
It's exactly that kind of humor that so easily translates later to a moving moment when Gladys speaks it in the pageant, though she puts her own spin on the line. Margie couldn't be more excited for audiences to see the new movie, but you shouldn't expect to be done with the Herdmans anytime soon after you see it.
You can't help but love the Herdmans at the end of the story. You just want more of them. And I remember my mom once telling a group of boys and girls, this was a quote. She said, "It's hard for me to put characters away once the book is finished. And sometimes they won't go away. Sometimes they just move in, put their feet up on the furniture, and dare me to be done with them."
So the Herdmans have moved in, quite possibly for good, and the movie Herdmans will surely seal the deal. It's worth letting them move that furniture around. We should welcome their version of the Christmas narrative, and Loren's, and Joanna's. Christmas, after all, isn't all holiness and austerity. Maybe, like Joanna says, there's some warmth to be found, even in a bit of chaos. No one needs to be an outsider around the holidays, not even the Herdmans. And hey, happy holidays, everyone. I'm Lisa DeSaro. Thanks for listening. This episode of Remember Reading is produced by my colleagues at HarperCollins, Nellie Kurtzman, Colleen O'Connell, Elba Luz, Allison Day, and Nancy Intelli. And special thanks to Podfly for their production support.